Alright guys, here we go. We're going to install the Toto 2-piece Entrada. This is the 12-inch rough round bowl version of the Entrada. Toto also makes a 2-piece Drake, and it's only a little bit more expensive than the Entrada. We're talking like maybe $30, and I think the Drake is above and beyond better than the Entrada. The Drakes also use the newer style flushing mechanism where the Entrada is still using the old rubber flapper. So I'm going to show you how to assemble the toilet. You're going to take your tank to bowl bolts, take one of the rubber washers and slip it up all the way up under the head of the bolt. And you're going to slide that bolt through the tank. Then you're going to take the other nut and washer and tighten them down to the tank. Tighten that bolt down to the tank. And then repeat that for the other side. You're going to want to make sure these are really nice and tight. Obviously don't crack the tank, but make sure they're tight. And then you're going to take the tank to bowl gasket and stick that up on the flush valve. And Toto always marks their flush valves and the flush valve nut so that you know that it's been tightened. So you always make sure those lines are lined up. And if they're not, just tighten it a little bit. Sometimes they're not. Then you're going to want to slip the tank to bowl gasket up onto the flush valve after you do that. So then after you have the tank completely assembled and you've got the gasket on the flush valve, you got your tank to bowl bolts in and tight, you're going to take the tank and set it on top of the bowl. Then you're going to take the other two nut and washer, slide them up on there, and tighten it down evenly. It's important that you make sure you tighten it down evenly, or else the tank will look crooked, or you could potentially crack it when you go to tighten down the other side. So you always want to give it like a couple cranks on one side, a couple cranks on the other side, a couple cranks on one side, a couple cranks on the other side. Kind of like, evenly tighten it down. I've never cracked a tank, and this is why. Because I'm cautious and I care. And the Totos have like these little porcelain tabs on the inside of the bowl where the tank sits, and it sits on top of those little tabs nice and flush, and once it's there, you've got your tank tight. Try and wiggle it back and forth and you should be fine as long as there's no movement. This is what the gap should look like for you. I want to show you those little tabs. There's the two little bumps in the back. You always want to make sure it's sitting nice and flat on that. And then there's a couple tabs in there. I don't know. You can't really see them. It's so close. There you go. You get a little peek at them. A couple little tabs. They look like nipples or something. Those are what you want to make sure it's sitting on, and you don't want to over tighten it. Just make sure it's nice and tight, and as long as you can't rock it back and forth, you're good. This is the best and most efficient way to carry a toilet, guys. You sling it over your shoulder like that. Keep the bowl pressed against your chest. It's easy, efficient way to carry a toilet. Here I'm going to be putting in new closet bolts. I recommend you change the closet bolts on every single toilet install that you do. Don't ever be lazy and try and reuse closet bolts. You may get away with it from time to time, but there will be times where those bolts will be rusted out down at the little flange and they'll pop out when you're tightening them. I mean, there's all kinds of things. You can not see a crack in the flange and, not changing the bolts you didn't notice, and boom, the bolt pops out. There's just so many different variables I don't want to even go into. Just change the bolts every single time. It's a good habit to be in, and if you buy the wax rings with the bolts, you've got no excuse why you don't change the bolts. Do the same thing with the other side of the closet bolt. Tighten them down. Make sure you use a nut and washer to tighten the bolt to the flange. It's the best way to do it. And then you're going to want to use 2 wax rings, one with flange and one without. The wax ring without flange you're going to want to set down first, and then you're going to want to set the wax ring with flange on top of that one. Just like that. So then to set the toilet, this is how I always do it. I kind of straddle it like this and just kind of go sit over the flange. I look on each side and see if my bolts are lining up, and then I just kind of drop it on and then settle it down onto the wax. And then you're going to use the bowl caps. There's a little piece to the bowl cap. It's a little flat washer, and it has a side that says this side up, and that's the side you're going to want facing up. You're going to put that down, then you're going to put the closet bolt washer down, and then use the closet bolt nut to tighten it down. Now the last thing you're going to do as far as installing the toilet goes, after you tighten down the closet bolt nuts, you're going to attach the supply line and begin filling the toilet. And the supply line's super easy to put on, and you don't want to over tighten it because the nut is made of plastic and it will crack. I usually only like to hand tighten them and then maybe give it like a half a turn with a wrench. So while the toilet's filling, I always like to then attach the toilet seat. It's really easy to do. It's just 2 bolts that slip through the little holes on the bowl, and then 2 nuts that tighten it down. And different seats have like different bolt heads. So sometimes it's flathead, sometimes it's Phillips. Sometimes you can go either or. It doesn't really make a difference. Just, if you're a handyman or a plumber or even a homeowner who likes to do his own stuff, you should have a flathead and a Phillips laying around. And I actually supplied the Toto soft close seat for this guy, which is like a $50 value.